Hello and welcome back to All About Community. Again, my name is Robert L. Harris and I am your host. When we went to break, I told you, matter of fact, I promised you that my next guest would also be a candidate for the mayor of Oakland. And of course, his name is Greg Hodge. Greg, welcome to All About Community.
It's good to be here. Always good to see you. You're always energetic. You always have good ideas and great questions. And so I'm really pleased to be here today.
Well, you may not be pleased by the time I finish today.
I don't know. We'll find out. We'll let the viewers be the judge. How's that?
Seriously, let's talk just for a few minutes about some of your background that may have prepared you for becoming mayor of this great city of Oakland.
Cool. Well, thank you for the question. I'm leading with the idea of hope and healing because I've lived here for 40 years. I've been involved in a number of community-based organizations. I've been a school board member. I've been a minister. I've been part of our cultural community as a musician. I've been
and you also been a lawyer.
And as a lawyer,
you
as a
still
community
are.
lawyer, still maintain my license. And so I think that I have the skills as a facilitative leader to get people to talk and have good conversation, to listen. And I think a fundamental skill set for politicians and anybody serving in public service is to listen.
Politicians don't like to listen.
We don't like to listen.
They like to talk.
And like to talk. And actually, I don't see myself as a politician. I see myself as a public servant. And that service ethic is what I learned in Arkansas, where I grew up. It's an ethic that I've learned in all these organizations.
I almost forgot.
We are Arkansans
we
by
both
birth
from
and
Arkansas.
Californians by choice. And so, but as a consensus builder, to get people to listen deeply, to lift up the best ideas, and then do our best to implement those ideas on behalf of the public. And I think all of the roles that I've played, whether it was with the Enhanced Enterprise Community Project under when Clinton was the president, and under L. Hugh Harris's leadership as a mayor, helped organize a community building team and help people move from dependence to independence. As someone in this last 2 years, we've organized the African American Response Circle as part of the Brotherhood of Elders Network. We raised $1 million. Distributed those resources out to the black community in response to COVID, and then made advocacy efforts at the county level, which I also think is part of what the mayor's job is, to use some of the $2 billion reserves. Think about this. This county of Alameda sits on $2 billion.
And what do they do with it?
It's sitting there. And it's supposed to be, quote, the rainy day fund. Well, it's storming. It's raining right now in terms of rental supports and food security. And this is in addition to the $360 million that's coming from the federal government as part of the American Rescue Plan. So I think the mayor of Oakland, even though it's not your official job, should be working with all of the other political systems, the school district, the county, the regional government associations, to bring solutions to Oakland.
And what will be, if elected, your top priorities for Oakland?
Top priorities, and I would imagine, not having seen your previous segments, it's going to be the same three that everybody's going to say. It's going to be sustainable economic opportunity. It's going to be reimagining public safety and making us feel safe. And it's not just about policing. It is about mental health services, social services, jobs, all the things that go into making the city safe. And then lastly, to deal with the tragedy, the immoral situation of having people unhoused. As I was driving over here today, right here on Lett Avenue, and seeing RVs lined up for 4 or 5 blocks.
It's tragic. I drove down the same street and I just couldn't believe I was in the city of Oakland.
We have to do something.
Why is that?
We have to
and
do
what
something
can
different.
we do
we
to
have
deal
to do
with
something
that?
Different. Well, I think that it's a solution that part of it is making sure that we protect current affordable housing, making sure we produce more affordable housing, making sure that folks who are renters don't have the risk of losing their rental units. And there's a range of things that we can do. There's some regional approaches that I've been part of over this last year or so, as we're looking at a $500 million pot from the state that would come into Oakland. $325 million of that would be spent on first-time home buyer assistance. Another portion would be spent on rental assistance. And the other part would be to help develop our cultural district and some of the business opportunities that we know are important. Our unhoused, 4,000, and minimally 4,000 people live on the streets of Oakland every day.
4,000?
4,000, and that is the previous count. The new count, unfortunately, we probably have more than that. 70% of those folks look like me and you, are African Americans. Many of those folks, and this is what, when they asked people back in 2020 why they were on the streets, about 62% of the reasons had to do with financial instability, and about 35% had to do with mental health, drug addiction. So if we know what the causes are, as a city, as a county, as a region, we have to begin to address those fundamental causes and implement our encampment management policy in a way that is fair to people living there, but is also fair to the rest of the city.
Now, you've heard of this new department in Oakland called the Violence Prevention Department?
Sure.
Do you know what they do?
I know what they do.
Or should do?
The organizations I've been part of have been supporters of that work.
Mm-hmm.
The idea was to give the same level of importance and stature to that department as the police department. So we hired a chief, Guillermo Cespedes, who is the chief of the Department of Violence Prevention. And the idea was that we want to evenly yoke what the police do and what we do with ceasefire, violence interrupters, people who then go out and figure out what is really going on. From my friends like David Muhammad, who runs the National Institute for Criminal Justice Reform, David will let us know that there's about 300 people within families that cause most of the problems. We know who they are. Now the question becomes, what are we doing with these 12, 13, 14-year-olds who have become just violent? And somebody said this to me the other day, almost like children soldiers of war that we've seen in other countries. So those kids we had to wrap a whole lot of services around those children, a whole lot around those families. And if we could do universal basic income, take away all of the economic reasons that this might be happening in our city, and then be able to move those families into economic self-sufficiency, we'll solve a lot of those problems. And we got to be a little tough on the ones who just really don't want help.
Well, that's true. But what are your comments on defunding the police? How do you see that?
I think the better conversation is reinvest in community. Oakland did not defund the police. Last year, when the city council debated that issue, ultimately what happened was that the Oakland Police Department overspent its budget by about $15 million. And this was the previous budget. The original vote to take away some of the academies and save, I think it was $5 million. They re-voted in August after making a decision in May, reversed that decision. So in Oakland, at least, we haven't defunded the police. I think the conversation, and I talked to my Black Lives Matter friends about this, I think almost everybody to a person will say the idea is you want to take those resources, about $301 million was spent on our Oakland Police Department. We spent, going back to Department of Violence Prevention, about $18 million on the Department of Violence Prevention. So the unevenness of the resources, you would take those resources, implement macro. It's a new program that would help folks with social services and mental health.
So the long and short of the story is that in Oakland, we have not, contrary to some beliefs, we have not defunded the police. Don't touch that remote. We will be right back with All About Community. Again, my name is Robert L. Harris. I am your host, and my guest is Greg Hodge, who is a candidate for the mayor of Oakland. We'll be right back.